Alright, this is our Stage 9 review. I'm going to go over some of the concepts that you're going to have for your test. First one being determining the case or the tense of a word. Alright, I left you 6 up here. We should be able to go through these and tell me the tense of these verbs and the case of these nouns based off of their structure. Intrawit is what tense? It is perfect tense. I know this because it is using the perfect stem from intro, which is intrawi. For a bot is what tense? It's the imperfect tense. I know that it is imperfect from the use of the BA. When it's a little tricky. I have to look for a macron. If there is a macron, it's perfect because that's a perfect stem. In this case, there is not one, so it is present tense. Looking at the nouns, over here we have Canum. The AM says, hello, I am part of the first declension, and I am what case? Accusative case. Athleta, I need to know that it's first declension, and I know that that A in the first declension makes it nominative. Domino has the O ending. If I know that that's second declension, I know that that O is dative. It is very important that you're able to tell the tense of the verb and the case of the nouns. Next up, I have dative forms. On this test, they're going to give you phrases like to you, to me, to the slave girls, to the slaves, to the slave, to the gladiator, to the gladiators, and you're going to have to know what endings to use or how to change that word into a dative. Please remember that you are going to see these personal pronouns. You will see the nominative to, you will see the accusative te, and the dative form is tibi. You need to know the same thing for the ego. We use ego for the nominative, me for the accusative, and mihi is our dative form of the personal pronouns. Whenever I look at these words right here, I gave you one for the first declension, second declension, and third declension. It's very important that we know those endings for each one. If it's first declension word like ancula, the dative singular to the slave girl is AE. If it is plural to the slave girls, it is IS. If it is second declension and I get a singular to the slave, I'm going to use the letter O. If it is second declension and plural, IS. To the gladiators is third declension. Singular is the letter I. To the gladiators, plural is our ibis. Knowing those dative endings is very important for this test. You're going to have a bunch of those to take care of. If I can erase all this here. I want you to make sure that you know when a word is being used as a first declension, second declension. Remember, we had a tricky one with puer. If it is to the boy, I would use puero. If it were to the boys, I would use pueris. So you had a few tricky ones like that. Make sure that you know what declension the noun is that you're dealing with. There are several questions where they're going to give you the Latin sentence, and they're going to give you 4 choices to translate that Latin sentence. As you see this one, we have tum servi, quibus discos traderunt. Then we have 4 choices, 1, 2, 3, 4. Very important that we understand what the difference between the choices is. I have tum, all of those thens are the same, so nothing different. I have servi, all of these are plural, so slaves, slaves, and slaves are all the same. Okay. I have quibus, that is also plural, so I look for citizens, and I get citizens, citizens, and citizens, and citizens. So those are all the same. Discos, that's plural, so I get discuses, and discuses, and discuses, and discuses. Traderant is to hand over, to trade. So I get to trade, to hand over, to exchange, pretty close, and hand it over. So it's not asking me anything about singulars or plurals or definitions, because all the definitions were correct and all of the singulars and plurals were correct. So that doesn't help me. What this is asking me is I have slaves being used as a subject in these three, and I have discuses being used as a subject in the number 2. Discus ends in OS, that's accusative, cannot be the subject, so I can eliminate number 3. Okay, and the difference between 1, 3, and 4. Okay, I have slaves as the subject, slaves as the subject, slaves as the subject. I have citizens also being used as a subject. I look at Kiwi Boost, it has ibis. No way it can be the subject, so I can eliminate number 3. So the difference between 1 and 4, we're down to 1 and 4. Okay, we have slaves as the subject. We have handed over or trade. Those are pretty much the same thing for our verb. We have discuses being used as an accusative or as a direct object in both. It is accusative being used as a direct object for both. I have to the citizens and for the citizens. I can translate the dative as 2 or 4. So really they're asking me to determine the difference between these two. If I tredderant, I'm handing over or am I trading? We have a different word for trade, even though I would have tredderant as a possibility for trade as well. The closest one is handed over. So that's fairly tricky in that they're asking you something that's very, very close. So the best answer is handed over, not trade. So I would choose number 4. Next we have English derivatives, words that are coming from Latin words. We have postprandial. I know that post means after. Prandial has to do with meals. Postprandial is after a meal. Celerity, clarity, from Latin celer, which means quickly. So this is swiftness. We have permanent. This is from per, which means thoroughly. Moneo, which means to stay. So to stay thoroughly or to stay forever is permanent. So long-lasting is permanent. Notorious is a little tricky. It comes from notice, which means famous or distinguished. In English, however, notorious has a negative connotation. So even though it comes from the Latin word, which has distinguished as a meaning, it's usually a negative, so we wouldn't want it to be a positive. This is usually something that is well known, usually for a negative reason, but well known usually for a negative reason. Ostentatious from ostentus, which means to show. So this is a showy, this is a very showy or elaborate. Cupidity, which has to do with Cupid. Cupid is the god of desire. If we desire too much, we are greedy. Cupidity is greedy. Reiterate. Re is again. Itero, I know that you haven't had this one, but in Latin that means to do for a second time. So this is kind of a redundancy, but it means to redo for a second time. So reiterate is to say something again. Traditions, this is to hand down or hand over to a different generation. So a tradition is the handing down of some kind of cultural aspects of tradition. Civic has to do with citizenship. Citizens are expected to vote, to do those kind of civic duties. This is a political term. So if I have a civic duty, I have a political obligation. Some of the cultural terms that you need to know. Calidarium, that's the really, really hot room. Frigidarium is a really, really cold room. We have Ostiarius is a doorkeeper. Palaestra, that's where we would work out. That's that open area where we would exercise, do our jumping and our wrestling. Tepidarium is a warm room. Apoditarium is our changing area. Colonnade is that covered walkway area around, usually around the palaestra. Hypocaust is the way that we heat, a system for heating the baths. Labrum is a basin for cold water. If you want to know, yes, it's like your shoulder labrum because it's shaped like a bowl. So is your labrum in your shoulder. And then you have well, it's misspelled, but it should be a strigil, and that is a scraper that you use to scrape off the oil. Okay, there, strigil is now correct spelling. Order of events on a typical bath day. Basically, in what order am I going to take a bath? The first thing I'm going to do is exercise in the palestra. Then I'm going to go to the changing room, take off all my clothes. I'm going to jump into that warm room, headed to the hot room, and then to end, I'm going to jump into that really, really cold water. Also, make sure that you're aware of the map of the rooms in the baths. You can find that on page 158 in your book. I'll do one later on with you. The person number tense of verbs, the case number and gender of nouns as well. You're going to have to know the characters from the stories. You're going to have to remember who Anthrax, Quintus, Marcellus, Milo, Metellus, Caecilius, Skeldrus, Mercator, and Fur. You're going to have to remember who they are, and you're going to have to remember some of the things that they said. Anthrax is the doorkeeper, or he's in charge of looking after the people's clothes in the apoditarium. And he gets in trouble, remember, because there's a thief in the apoditarium, and Skeldrus is the one who basically chastises him for being, not paying attention. Quintus throughout the stories. Marcellus, that's the merchant that Metella goes and visits with Melissa. Milo, of course, that's the athlete with the statue that gets his nose broke. Milo and the statue lose their nose. Metella does the shopping for Quintus whenever she's looking for a toga for his birthday. Caecilius is throughout the stories as well. The Mercator is not Marcellus. That's the Mercator that's in the apoditarium with Anthrax and Skeldrus whenever they're talking about the thieves. Cultural questions. When did the Romans use the baths? They used them in the morning. Cost of the baths. Cost of the baths was free. When did the Romans exercise? Pretty much every day. And they did it before they would take their baths, and then they would go through the bathing process. What was used during the bathing process to clean the body? They didn't use soap. Remember, they used oils and a striggle to clean themselves. How were women's baths different from the men? Pretty much the same kind of baths setup as the men had. What kind of social atmosphere did the baths provide? Very loud. It was very social. You went out and you'd yell at your buddies. You'd wrestle with your buddies. But it was a very, very chaotic atmosphere in the baths. What kind of where did the idea from the baths originate? The Romans didn't come up with the bath idea. The Greeks did. They stole this from the Greeks. However, who designed the hypocaust heating system? The Romans did come up with that hypocaust system. And remember, that was basically the heating of water using a furnace, and what was used to heat the hypocaust system, that would have been wood. Again, misspelled system. Good job. Let me fix that. There you go. Gotta love the pause button. So make sure that you're aware of all those cultural answers. Let's go through some practices for you guys. I have four sentences here, and you're being asked to determine either the tense or the case of the words involved. So go through these sentences and pick your answer, and let's see if you get it right. In the first one, we have Ancilla quinto vinum datit, and I have bolded the word datit, so you're going to tell me the tense of datit. Remember, we have do, dari, dedi, and dedi is what I'm using here, so that is that perfect stem. The answer is C. Poeta spectoribus narrabit. I see the BA. I know I'm dealing with the imperfect tense. Poeta spectoribus narravit. Poeta is what is being used here. I recognize that as a first declension masculine word. First declension ending in A is my nominative. Ancilla quinto vinum dat. I recognize quinto from quintus, which is usi. That makes it second declension. The use of the letter O makes it dative. Translations of those, number one is that the slave girl gave wine to Quintus. Number two, the poet was telling a understood story to the spectators. Number three, the poet told a story to the spectators. And the last one, the slave girl gave wine to Quintus, or gives wine to Quintus. The difference in those are the tenses of the verbs. If you look at those, make sure that you can tell the difference between Rawit and Narbat and Dedit and Dot as well. Throughout this test, there are many questions that are going to ask you to determine the person, number, and tense of a verb, and the case, number, and gender of a noun. So you need to be able to take a sentence like this, Kewis, actori, pecuniam, tradiderant, and you're going to have to say, okay, Kewis is the subject, and it is, the case of it is nominative. It is plural, and it is masculine or feminine, either one. I'm going to choose masculine because I'm a guy. So make sure that you can look at these other words and do the same thing that I did right here. The case, number, and gender for the nouns, and the person, number, tense for the verb. So you try these other three words, and let's see if you can get them right. Okay, for actori, I recognize that as a third declension word. I know that it's not second declension because, well, that would have to be a nominative or second declension. I've already got a nominative with Kewis. So I know that's not nominative. I should be able to tell by process of elimination that it's third declension. The letter I being used means that I'm going to have an indirect object here. The case that's being used is the dative. It is singular. The number is singular. And the gender is masculine. For my next word, pecuniam, hopefully I recognize pecuniam as a first declension word. If I recognize it as first declension, then I should be able to say, okay, I got am in the first declension. That means I have an accusative. That's direct object. Accusative. The number is singular. And the gender is feminine. For tradiderant, I have to look at this. I have to look at the stem that's being used. I'm using tradidi. The errant is a huge clue that it's going to be perfect, but I look at the stem. Tradidi comes from trado, tradera, tradidi. Tradidi is my perfect stem, so I know that I have the perfect tense. I know that the number over here, nt, makes it plural, and the tense is. The person is third person. I should have done that first. So let me redo that real quick. It is third person because of the nt. It is plural because of the nt. And it is perfect because I'm using the perfect stem. Tradidi. You also need to be able to translate this. So the translation, I said that my subject was citizens. I said that my verb was tradiderant, so handed over. I said that pecuniam was my direct object, so money. And I said that actori is my indirect object, so I have to the actor. And I go through and put my little words in if I need them. I would say the citizens handed over money to the actors. I would be good. So make sure you can translate those as well. Added a little bit more practice for you guys. Go through here, answer these, determine whether it is present, imperfect, or perfect for the verbs, the first two, and then for the nouns, the last two, choose what case you think it is using. For number one, intra is our perfect. That's my perfect stem. For number two, BA tells me that I'm using the imperfect. For number three, I have a noun, so I need to determine the case. I have a nominative, I have an accusative. The IS, if I recognize amicus as a second declension, then I know that the IS is a dative ending. Next one, metellon, AM, I'm done, it's accusative. Hopefully I can recognize that fairly quickly. We've already gone over some of these, but I want you to try to get these yourself. I want the Latin word for to me, I want the Latin word for to the gladiator. I want the Latin word for to Melissa, and the Latin word for to the merchants. So try that out. To me is mihi. To the gladiator, I know it's third declension, so I have gladiator, and it's gladiatoris. That's why I know it's third declension. The dative ending for the third declension is the letter I. Melissa is first declension, so I'm going to start off with Melissa. I take off the A, that gives me the base of the word. The dative singular, because she's singular, ending for the first declension is AE. To the merchants, mercator, mercatoris. Mercatoris, take off the IS, leaves me with mercator. The plural, it's plural. The plural dative ending is ibis. So make sure that you can come up with the dative forms of Latin words as well. Lastly, you should be able to take the English he hands over and give me the Latin form of the word. So he hands over. What tense is it? Hands over is present tense. So I use trodit because it is using the present stem. Troditi has the perfect stem. I don't want to use that. Here I have the imperfect, so I don't want to use the correct answer is trodit. She was crying. Was is the key. I'm looking for BA. There it is. He gave. I need a gave. That's a perfect stem. So dot's present. BA is imperfect. Dedi. Do, dari, dedi. Dedi is my perfect stem. Dedi is my answer. He used to throw. Used to is an imperfect form, just like was or were was. Used to, began to, those are imperfect forms. I have present, so I can't use it there. Yeki, that is the perfect. Yakio, yekara. Yeki is the perfect stem, so I can't use it. BA is the imperfect marker, so I'm going to use yakiabat. Last is the map. Again, a detailed map is in your book on page 158. I kind of gave you one here. I wanted to go through where the rooms are located and the order in which I would visit the rooms. So if I came in this entrance right here, the first thing that I would see is the palestra. And I would go in there, I'd do all my workout stuff, do my wrestling, my jumping around. After that, I would go to the apoditerium, which is number 2 right here. I would change my clothes. I would continue over to the tepidarium. I would take myself over to the tepidarium, which is number 3. Notice no pool in there. That's that room where I'm just going to sweat myself out a little bit. After I go to 3, I'm going to go to the colodarium. That's where that hot room is. Got me a nice little hot tub there. It's right here. That little circle is our hot tub. Whenever I'm finished, I'm headed to the frigidarium, number 5. I'm going to jump in there and have me a nice cold plunge. That is your review for stage 9. Good luck on your test.